All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Let's jump right in, shall we? Today we're diving deep into Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. We're talking Scottish Rite Masonic philosophy here.
Published back in 1878, it's a classic.
Definitely a cornerstone. So for folks who might not be familiar, think of it like the ultimate guidebook for Masons, particularly those within the Scottish Rite.
Dense, packed with symbolism, layers upon layers of meaning. But that's why we're here, to break it down.
Exactly. And today we're honing in on a specific degree within the Masonic structure, the Prince Ameth. So let's say you've reached this Prince Ameth level. What's expected of you? What are the guiding principles?
Well, right off the bat, Pike lays out some pretty clear expectations. He's big on a Prince Ameth being earnest, true, reliable, sincere, all those qualities that just scream trustworthy.
Makes sense. Got to build that solid foundation.
Absolutely. But here's where it gets even more interesting. He doesn't just stop at personal virtue. He connects these qualities directly to how a Prince Ameth should act out in the world.
So it's more than just being a good person. It's about actively upholding justice, right?
You got it. Pike actually says a Prince Ameth is obligated to protect the people against illegal impositions, to contend for their political rights. And this part's key to make sure those who benefit most from the government also shoulder its burdens.
Yeah, that's a powerful statement. It's a much more active role in society than I think a lot of people might expect. And it reminds me of something else that really jumped out at me while I was reading this chapter. The great distinguishing characteristic of a Mason is sympathy with his kind.
Right. He doesn't just leave it there, though. He goes on to talk about how Masons are connected to all of humanity, not just those within the order.
It's about recognizing that shared human experience.
Precisely. Not some exclusive club. And for Pike, that recognition comes with a responsibility to act. He states it flat out. It is his first Masonic duty to serve his fellow man.
Wow, no ambiguity there. He's drawing a direct line between personal development and a commitment to something bigger than yourself.
Right. And this service, Pike argues, should be directed especially towards the great suffering masses of the common people.
So we're not just talking about charity here, right?
Yeah.
This is about actively fighting for a fairer society.
That's it. And here's where Pike's ideas about education and personal responsibility come into play. He's wary of manipulating or patronizing the people, warns against flattery, concealing your opinions, or pretending like they're infallible.
It's about empowerment, not control. Interesting. So how does he propose we go about empowering people to create this fairer society?
Well, Pike believes that the survival of a free government depends on the virtue and intelligence of its people.
Okay, so education's a big part of it.
Huge. He argues that if people don't cultivate those qualities, virtue and intelligence, they become vulnerable to those who would exploit them.
They're easy targets.
Exactly. He actually uses this striking image, saying they become booty made in war to be auctioned off to the highest bidder.
Wow, okay, now that's an image that sticks with you.
It's meant to. He's making a direct connection between individual responsibility and the fate of society as a whole. And he doesn't stop there. He goes on to describe the very real dangers of an uneducated and morally corrupt populace.
It's like he's saying that ignorance and vice are diseases that can eat away at a society from the inside out.
You got it. And confronting these diseases, as he sees them, requires actively tackling social ills head-on. This is actually where Pike's writing takes a turn that might surprise you.
You were saying that Pike doesn't really sugarcoat things, so how does that play out when he's talking about real-world problems?
He gets pretty blunt, especially when it comes to poverty.
Yeah, I have to admit, some of his descriptions were pretty jarring.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back.
It's like he wants to rip the comfortable facade right off to show the ugly truth underneath, you know?
Exactly. He states pretty clearly that even in the wealthiest nations, a large portion of the population is struggling to even meet their basic needs. And he connects that directly to the idea of a free society.
Yeah, I noticed that. So for Pike, a society can't truly be free if a big chunk of its people are trapped in poverty.
Right. He argues that neglecting the needs of the most vulnerable ultimately harms everyone.
It's that whole a chain is only as strong as its weakest link idea, I guess.
Kind of, yeah. He even suggests that when a nation allows a large part of its population to just wallow in poverty and ignorance, it's basically creating a pathway to tyranny.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, he argues that it breeds instability, creates social unrest.
Okay, so he's laying out some pretty serious consequences here. But how does he actually propose we address this?
He grapples with the question that honestly feels as relevant today as it did back in the
Which
1870s.
is,
How, in a populous and wealthy country, blessed with free institutions and a constitutional government, are the great masses of the manual labor class to be enabled to have steady work at fair wages, to be kept from starvation and their children from vice and debauchery, and to be furnished with that degree not of mere reading and writing, but of knowledge that shall fit them intelligently to do the duties and exercise the privileges of freemen.
wow, he really lays it all out there.
Yeah.
He doesn't just identify the problem, he lays out the stakes in no uncertain terms. That's quite a challenge he's throwing down.
He does. And what's fascinating is that even though he's writing specifically to Masons about this Prince Amyth degree, it feels relevant to everyone, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. He's speaking to those universal values of justice, compassion, the importance of education, the need for a society where everyone has a chance to thrive.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying that while the specific duties of a Prince Amyth might be spelled out in Masonic teachings, the responsibility for building a better world falls on everyone. It reminds me of something else he said that really stuck with me. It was that bit about freedom, wasn't it? The way Pike describes it, he doesn't see it as just the absence of restrictions, but something much deeper.
Totally. It's tied to personal growth, you know?
Yeah.
Virtue, to wisdom, to self-mastery.
I think I remembered the line. It was something like, true freedom is impossible without.
To be free is the same thing as to be pious, to be wise, to be temperate and just, to be frugal and abstinent, and to be magnanimous and brave. And to be the opposite of all these is the same as to be a slave.
Yeah, there you go. Wow, when you put it like that, it really makes you think. He's saying that if we're ruled by our own vices and our own ignorance, we're slaves even if no one's putting chains on us.
Right. And he brings that back to society as a whole, too. Think about a nation that can't govern itself wisely, that's riddled with internal problems. Pike suggesting they're a hair's breadth away from losing that freedom to something else, something outside themselves.
It's a reminder that real freedom for individuals and societies takes constant work. Vigilance, even. Can't just take it for granted.
Exactly. And I think part of that vigilance is recognizing the inherent worth of every single person, treating each other with that basic respect and compassion no matter what.
He's big on that idea of a shared humanity, isn't he? Like, no matter our social standing, our circumstances, we're all in this together.
Mankind constitutes one great brotherhood, facing similar joys, sorrows, just dealing with the messy, complicated experience of being alive.
It's a good reminder, especially these days when it's so easy to get caught up in what divides us. We're all part of that same human family underneath it all.
And you know what else? He's not afraid to emphasize humility. Pike reminds us that none of us are above life's difficulties. He even says, and I love this, no tower of pride was ever yet high enough to lift its possessor above the trials and fears and frailties of humanity.
Right. No matter how together someone seems, we're all vulnerable in the end. Good reality check.
And I think for Pike, true strength isn't about power or control. It's about that compassion, that empathy, and that real commitment to the well-being of everyone.
So how do we cultivate that strength, that compassion? How do we put these big ideas into practice in our own lives?
Well, Pike sees life as this constant journey of learning, of growth. He wants us to face challenges head-on, with courage, with determination.
Easier said than done sometimes.
I know, right? But he reminds us that suffering is the discipline of virtue, that by facing those tough parts of life, we come out stronger, wiser.
It's easy to shy away from the hard stuff, try to stay comfortable. But maybe those are the experiences that really teach us something, that shape us.
Absolutely. He doesn't pretend it's easy, but there's this underlying message that by going through those fires, and we all go through them, we become better equipped to build a better future for ourselves and for everyone around us.
I don't know about you, but this whole deep dive into Pike's morals and dogma has really given me a lot to think about. And it's amazing how relevant his words from over a century ago still feel today.
Right. It really speaks to the power of these timeless ideas. Justice, compassion, the pursuit of a more just world for everyone.
He wasn't just laying out rules for how a Prince Amyth should act. He was asking these big, challenging questions that I think we all benefit from wrestling with, regardless of our backgrounds or beliefs.
I agree. At its core, it's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the future. That even small acts of kindness, courage, and understanding, they ripple outwards. They make a difference.
That's a powerful note to end on. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into Albert Pike's work and that it sparks some reflection on your own role in building a more just, compassionate, and enlightened world. Until next time.